This is Gail Carr here with Tim Keefe, and welcome, Tim.
Thank you so much.
Beautiful day to come up. And
it's always a beautiful day to come back to Plymouth.
Nice to have you here, and we look forward to hearing all your rich stories of your time here. So why don't we start with when you first came to Plymouth, what was it, the population of the students, employees,
Sure.
and your stories to start.
Well, I started in January of 1977. A very good year, and a little odd to come out in January, but I had been in school and I was pursuing some advanced study in education, and so it took me through December, and so I started applying for jobs. And one of the funny parts was I was applying for teaching jobs, and suddenly I saw this position in the newspaper. I think we called them dorm directors back then, but residence hall directors, RDs, as it progressed, dorm supervisors. And I had run a residence hall in upstate New York at a university for a year as a grad student. And I never thought there really was a career for me in this, but I said, well, I'll put an application in. Well, Dick Hage and his committee called me almost immediately. I came up, I applied for the position, and offered almost immediately, and I accepted. Probably they were thinking, oh good, we have somebody who starts in January. So I was thrilled to be there. Well, the next 2 days I got 3 teaching offers. And I had already said yes here, and I don't believe in going back on your word. So I said, well, I'm committed now. Fully thinking I would end up a superintendent, etc. I'm so thankful that I took the path I did, because what we experienced here in Plymouth was just so special. So, but I started as the dorm supervisor of Blair Hall, 200 or 210 men. My salary was $6,900, which I thought was an incredible amount of money, given I had housing. And back in those days, we had food as well. And so it was pretty special. Pretty special.
Educational benefit.
And I managed to get a master's here at no cost to me, and I even started plugging away at an MBA, which I never quite finished because I didn't see the need at that point in my career. So if I'd stayed a few more years, that doctorate was looking pretty good, but nonetheless. And so when I first got it, you're not gonna be able to see all these pictures, but I'll just kind of show them up. But this is a picture of a parade. I'm not sure what parade, probably homecoming parade. And you've got Harold Hyde, our president, and his wife in the back seat with Peter Coffin driving the car. And that's one of my fun stories, is when I was first here as a brand new staff, for some reason, and I do not recall why, but I'm walking down the road in front of Rounds Hall with President Hyde. And if you didn't know him, there was a aura about him. He was a special guy, did a lot for this institution. And I don't know what I said or did that prompted him to say this. Probably I was mouthing off something egotistical, but he said, Tim, you know that if you or I passed away today, there would be a lovely ceremony, and then the campus would go on without us. And that always stuck with me. Don't get too high on yourself, because all of us can be replaced, and the institution is going to survive. So you do your best to make your mark while you're here. So that was a fun little picture that I had. So the student population was I think about 1,800 at that time. Yeah, I could be wrong about that. It might have been a little less. And it was Plymouth State College. I'm not old enough to be here when it was Plymouth Teachers College, but I'll just keep going if it's all right with you. So I worked here full-time for 39 years. 5 years ago, I took an early separation program. At the time, thinking I was going to be a snowbird. We had found a house in Florida, and after a few years being away from the grandkids in the winter, my wife said, that's it, no more. So we sold that, and now we are firmly planted down in Epsom, New Hampshire, and enjoying our life there. So that's a very exciting time for us. But I did continue, as did my wife, to teach here at the university. So for the last 5 years, we've taught in the fall. The first year seminar, and I dabbled in the criminal justice department. And we're actually taking a sabbatical year this year, though. So the first fall in my entire life that I can remember that I am not having to engage in full-time work or aggressive work in the fall. So I'm looking forward to doing some fall fishing. So that's going to be fun. Yeah, that's retirement. Yep. So you can just imagine what my responsibilities were. I had 200 plus men. In my first year, I had virtually the entire football team living in my residence hall. And that actually was wonderful because they were a good group, and I knew if they got a line, I just had to one threat that I'm going to call your coach, and boom, it was done. It was done. The only downside is we had one student, and I'm not sure if I can mention names, but I will. And you can. No, I won't mention name. But he was a wonderful soul, but he was 300 pounds of muscle, and everything he did caused chaos and havoc. So people going around just for fun, kicking the doors to scare people. Every door he kicked it right off the hinges. And he came in with his head down, so apologetic, and he said, "I'll pay for everything. I'm so sorry," you know. But that was fun. That was a lot of fun. So throughout my career at Plymouth, you know, students were always my primary focus. I felt blessed that every job I had was focused on student success. Sometimes that success came from having to hold them accountable, because I did have to wield that disciplinarian stick for much of my career. But I quickly learned, not only through practice but through professional experiences, that those are the moments that sometimes you can really touch someone's heart and soul because they are at the bottom. And I had some wonderful experiences. I won't show you pictures. I think I have some of the cinder block that went through the roof of my car that a student threw from the roof of Blair Hall. And I went on the rampage, found out who it was, brought him to Dick Cage, then took him through the conduct process, and he was removed from school. And a year later, and his father insisted that when he comes back, he's going to wash and wax your car every week for a year, which I did not allow. But when he came back, he saw me across the quad and came screaming my name across the quad. And I say, I don't know what he's going to do when he gets here, but he gave me a hug, and he said that I changed his life. And that experience changed his life, not me per se, because Dick handled the process. But those are the kind of things that can happen when you work with students closely. So what was it like here in the beginning? Well, it was an exciting time. It was the 70s, the late 70s. Ironically, I'm DJing an event at a senator's house in a few weeks, and it's a 70s theme. So I've been reliving that era by getting my music ready. But change was the name of the game. Everything was changing. This campus, if you saw it then to now, is just unbelievable. And we'll talk a little bit about that over time. But we're starting to look at a co-ed direction in some of the buildings, and ultimately got there in every building. But that was a little traumatic, but it was interesting. And for those of you who don't know, the drinking age in 77 was 18. And kegs were allowed virtually everywhere on campus. As a matter of fact, the entertainment every Thursday, Friday, Saturday night were keg parties in Spear Gym or in what was Hall, I don't know what you want to call it, Hall Commons now, I guess. And so entertainment was pretty simple. Behavior was challenging. And then, of course, the drinking laws started to change. We had the famous keg riot, I think in 1979, when we banned kegs. And trust me when they say the good old days, some of them were not all so good. So I think things got far better. But I always have found, despite whatever you want to categorize them as millennials or whatever name you give them, students always cared. They always cared about each other. They wanted to help. They wanted to be involved. And we had wonderful times getting them connected with service projects in the community. And we can talk about that a little bit more. Well, I'll talk about it now. We initiated something called Pride in Service to the Community Day, PSC Day. And hundreds of students every year would take on projects around the community and the campus, all the way to the Science Center and other projects around the region. And it was just a day to volunteer and give back. And we had some tremendous success with that.
Staff participated too.
Oh, staff participated fully. And the only funny story I'll tell you is, yes, we always had a lot of faculty and staff involved. And one day we cleaned the what is now the amphitheater and the park down on the river. So we went down to clear all the brush and clean it all out. And mind you, this is spring, so things aren't really in bloom yet. And almost everybody who went on that project came down with poison ivy. Because poison ivy is contagious even if it's dead. It's still, the oils are there. So that was kind of a fun time.
I'm glad I didn't go down there. I was with a rake on the campus.
Yes.
So I was safe.
Yeah. A lot of painting, a lot of raking, a lot of cleaning. So that was good. One of the questions is, what, unless you want to ask it, what was it about the offer that made you accept this position? I kind of alluded already that it was January. I was looking for a job. And I really didn't know where this journey was going to go. But looking back, I was guided here, I'm convinced, by a higher power, and it was wonderful. But I like to use the expression, and I've used this with staff that we've hired over the years, that it was like I had two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and I took the one less traveled because I didn't think you could travel down a road of being a dorm supervisor, and I was wrong, and the profession of student affairs blossomed as well while I was involved in it. So that was a great moment, great moment. Do you want to ask me something?
Well, I was going to say, how about we go, was there someone at Plymouth State that had an influence on you? I think you've got some.
I have a lot of people, but I'm going to tell you, rather than go on forever, I'm just going to show you a couple of pictures. An old picture, and this is, of course, Dick Hage when he was a young whippersnapper. And Dick hired me, he was my first boss, and he was my boss for most of my time here at Plymouth State until towards the end. And Jim Smith was my immediate supervisor, but Dick hired me, and residential life was, I don't want to use the term loosely, but it really was a big fraternity and sorority combined, because we had men and women, but it was, we became extremely close-knit. We really helped each other. It was a family. This whole campus was a family. And when we worked together, we would do anything it took to make this campus a better place. And you probably, those of you who have been around the campus for a long time, know how involved the Res Life staff has been in virtually everything that has happened here. The other guy, who I very quickly ended up with, was John P. Clark. And again, you can't see that picture too well either, but I was the editor, not the editor, I was the advisor to the student yearbook. So I was able to rifle through a lot of old pictures. So I still have some that someday they're going to surface and people are going to go, where did you get that picture? But so those are a couple of people that really made a big impact on me and my career here at Plymouth State.
What major changes do you think you have seen from when you started to what we have now?
Oh boy, that is a question that I struggled with because there's so much.
And you can take it from structure, from curriculum, from students, the housing, the buildings.
Well, first, one of the things that strikes me when we talk about that is John Wacker was a planner for the university, so I think I can say his name. And he coined a phrase that stuck with me from the early days, which was that we were an urban campus in a rural environment. And what that translated to me was we were plunked right in the middle of the town of Plymouth. And as we grew, our growth definitely pushed and stressed the community. So it became clear to Dick and I at an early stage that we need to be good neighbors. We have to do everything in our power. PSC Day was an example of that. We founded in the late 70s the CCC, the Campus Community Council. And that was a place where community members, students, faculty, and staff would all come together to try to talk about what are those stressors, what are the problems, what can we do to make them better. And so with that change, which was very good for the institution, the richness, the programs, the diversity, everything about who we are today came through that growth, as did some of those stressors. So we really aggressively, we instituted neighborhood cookouts, ice cream socials, things to bring the neighbors and the students together to try to get them to know each other and appreciate that, hey student, you've got a family with 3 kids living 2 doors over. And for those families to say, these are students who are respectful and caring, they just might need a little reminder every now and then. So let's be together and be friends. And some I won't quote names because I don't want them chopped out of here, but some very powerful relationships developed with people who were quite antagonistic to the university at that time because of the way we connected them with students. And as they really got to know each other, they became family too. And so it was some special times. But the buildings are pretty evident in terms of what the changes are, but housing expanded dramatically. I have one picture in here I was just going to clip to for a fun second, but it's a picture of Tom Weeks, and Tom is holding a gigantic couple of boxes next to him, and it was one of our growth spurts, and we had to triple up all the rooms in Grafton and Smith. And if you don't know what that means, trust me that you have to go out and buy a 3rd set of furniture, and furniture that can be stacked and lofted to fit that many people into a room. Thankfully, because I had that good connection with the football team, talked to the coach. The entire football team came up and carried furniture up because the elevators were too slow. So they just said, forget it. They grabbed the stuff and went jogging up the stairs. They had their workout. And we tripled up all those rooms to accommodate a very large entering class. And we had to do that for a while until we could expand our housing opportunities and selections on campus. So,
and I think there used to be lounges in Smith and Grafton.
the lounges were quads, actually. We actually
they got turned into
they were triples for quads for many years, actually. And I was happy the day that we could bring more housing online and return those lounges so that the students had a space on their floor to gather and be together. And sometimes a roommate would say, get out of here, I got to go to bed. Well, it's nice to have a place to go, study, listen to your music, what have you. So those are pretty important times, I think, in the history of the campus.
And the workers learned from the students, and the students learned from the people working here.
Oh,
So
absolutely, absolutely.
A good give and take.
And since you want to jump to workers for a second, this is the picture you probably can't see either, but it's myself, Mike Horton, and Peter Coffrin. I'm not sure who the woman is, dressed in rather gregarious outfits because we cared about the workers here. Another thing about Plymouth State is we all cared about each other. So we hosted an event called Operating Staff Appreciation Day. And it was a day to tell our operating staff how much they meant to this campus and how much the work meant. Started with a breakfast that we all served, and we put on skits and we entertained, had some crazy times. I do not have a picture of me in a coconut bra, which was thanks to Vinny, the pizza guy, if those of you have been around a while and remember Vinny. And he got me dressed up in a hula skirt with a coconut bra doing the hula dance while he did some DJ things. So those are some fun times.
So you were a PAT, I believe, probably during all of
this. It was the early stages of PAT, and again, if you've been around a while, John Clark was very instrumental in that evolution. So I was working with John then and just immediately became very, very involved in student government. We had some, not student government, I apologize, in the PAT government. I was also involved in student government as one of their advisors. But it was, the PAT group became a really tight-knit group, and you know the cookbook, and I still have one of my recipes in that cookbook, and it's a good one. It's a good one. But we did some great things. We developed the PAT scholarship over the years to help students who needed some financial assistance to be here and be successful. But we also supported each other, and we did a lot to make sure that our governance structure engaged all elements of the governance, both operating staff, faculty, and staff PATs. Together in the decision-making and information sharing processes, which is so important to have a tight-knit family. So.
Can you talk a little bit more about the celebrations that we had throughout the different times?
I tried to excerpt some pictures, but this one again you won't see it. But this is when we closed the streets. One of our big celebrations, huge things, and we have the faculty foursome up there singing to Joan Tamling. And we had all sorts of activities and events during that. I believe this was the same event, but it could have been a Summerfest, but this is the tricycle riding competition. And so I see Theo Calico and Jim Hobart. I think that's Dick's backside, but I'm not 100% sure. And I was emceeing in the background, and President Farrell is up there on the stage. So we did celebrations in a big way. Then we had our Summerfests, and for example, this is a Summerfest picture of pie eating contests, and you can't recognize Gardner Tucker or Gary Holden because their faces are covered in whipped cream. And I have to show you this picture. We had a motorcycle jumping competition. I was successful in jumping over 5 cars and a fire ladder truck on my motor scooter, and they were all tiny little toys. But we built that up in a big way, so that was a lot of fun. That's the tricycle competition. Oh, there's another big moment for us when we acquired the Holmes House. And it became initially the residential life offices, and it's evolved into other things now. But we did a whole recreation of what it was like during the Holmes Plymouth Academy days. And this is a picture of Mady Barrett and I having high tea in the Holmes House. And that's become a wonderful addition and a piece of our legacy and our history. And you may also recall, some of you, that Trish Lindbergh wrote a whole play about when for our 250th, no, that was marking the moment, we'll get there, but we did another play that was recreating the moment that Holmes Plymouth Academy was first approved by the state legislature and became what then became a normal school and then became Plymouth State College, Plymouth State University. And again, I have photographs of some of those things, but I won't take up too much time, but they were fun times.
What do you feel your major contribution to the college, to the town, to the state have been?
This is one of those things that's hard to answer because I don't feel like I want to say, oh, I did this and I did that. But I'll share a few things because a lot of people are involved, and I think the campus will remember some of them, I hope, in a really good way. But I'll share a couple of things. First of all, I brought, some of you remember the good old week bag of paper, but this was a fun one because it's one of my funny stories too, but I'll tell it now because I was asked to do a domestic violence video by the police department, and Kathleen Arecki was my co-star, and I was the bad guy. And so we staged, really the whole point was an educational process so that people who were experiencing domestic violence would know what would happen if you reported it. So it started with the act of domestic violence, fortunately ending with my just raising my hand, and then they cut that, to then my being handcuffed and taken away. And then the whole process, court process, the support networks, everything that happened. Well, the funny part of the story was my kids' friends were watching this on television, not understanding what it was. And all of a sudden they go to their mommy and their daddy saying, Mr. Keefe just got arrested. He's in a jail cell. And so it took a little while to get my kids to understand this was all acting to help people who might be in those circumstances. But I've held a lot of positions here at Plymouth State, so I could talk a long time about things that I was happy to be involved in. But I'll mention a couple. This glass thing is here just as a reminder. I received that because for my 10 years of involvement in the Educational Theater Collaborative. And those of you who know what ETC is, it's I believe, probably one of the most powerful town-gown relationship things we do, because it brings young people, children, it brings town members, faculty, staff, college students all together to put on a musical, a powerful, wonderful musical every year in the month of January. I was able to be in 18 of them, but I started them primarily because I was in them with my children. And Lauren worked with Trish from elementary school and ended up doing tons of her shows, but this is a picture which you won't see too well, but it's my mom, but my son and Lauren and I, and this is from The Sound of Music, which Lauren played Maria, and my son was a German officer. And this is another picture of one, this is Oliver. I got to play Mr. Bumble in Oliver, and some people would argue that's a fitting title for me, Mr. Bumble. But I guess my point is, in terms of things that the campus does every year that make a difference, and everybody who participates, and you can't give enough credit to Trish Lindberg, Dr. Lindberg, as the director and the coordinator of this from its creation, because I just believe it has such a huge impact on the entire community. This is another little piece of memorabilia I received from the Social Work Club in 2003, and I only have it here to talk about the fact that we as a campus also make a huge impact in the lives of senior citizens through things like the senior prom, and it went on before that with the Res Life staff hosting that event in the dining hall and the food service helping us out to bring housebound or homebound seniors in, have a good time, dance with college students, be talked with, and I have 1,000 pictures I could share, but those are special moments. And then certainly becoming Plymouth State University. And I can remember testifying before the legislature at that occasion, and I will not mention the name of the institution, but only one person spoke against us, and did not prevail, thankfully, but I won't mention the name or the institution, but nonetheless, that was a momentous occasion for us. And our 250th, again, but in terms of my personal accomplishments, I believe strongly in being involved, being a volunteer, serving in music ministry in churches, to being on the Katie board of directors, to I was very involved in regional activities with the student affairs profession, both state and region. And again, I don't want to go on and on because I feel like it gets too close to
And
bragging.
you were also recognized as a distinguished PAT.
That was a wonderful day. As a matter of fact, I have had some lines in here which I'll just paraphrase, but from the remarks that were given, at that event, and it made me feel proud because I was recognized, and this is one of them. I got to work with students so closely, and this was a senior class award, which I received 5 times. I worked really closely with the seniors, so I'm not bragging about that because I was the one they knew. But it's just been such a wonderful experience to work with students that closely every day.
What changes do you think we've learned from our past that might support those that are working at Plymouth today?
That's a great question, and I do have some thoughts on that. I just want to show quickly, though, this is another change. These were the student handbooks from back in the days of Plymouth Teachers College, and they are a hoot to read. But I'm not going to read them to you today. But in terms of changes or advice that we could give to the institution about moving forward, when we took the early separation incentive in 5 years ago, Plymouth was at the cusp of dealing with some really challenging times and some challenges that we had seen coming for quite some time, and in my humble opinion did not galvanize the campus around them together to try to say, what are we going to do? So as a result, some actions were taken that cost us a lot of very valued long-time employees, long-time history of this campus, because of, I'll be blunt and say it, there were financial demands, and so they had to purge. And so there was some purging that went on, and I feel it's sad because I'm so glad we're doing this because this is a sense of that history. But my advice would be, when you have a major issue facing the institution, bring your brains, bring the family together, and work it out like a family, not like a dictator, not like somebody at the top just deciding this is what we're going to do, and then it suddenly happens. That doesn't help the morale of the campus, and it doesn't build a sense of community, which is what Plymouth is famous for. That is why we've all stayed here for as long as we did. And I'm hopeful it's still here, and if it's not, I hope it will be regained.
Is there anything we haven't covered today that you would like to share with the audience?
Well, you asked me some funny stories, if I had any, so I've told you a couple.
Any kind of story.
Any kind of story, some funny, but I've managed to work. One of the best is a Dick Hage story that I have to tell, because Dick Hage, John Fisher, and I were fishing in a canoe on Newfound Lake when the Marine Patrol decided to come and check our licenses and our equipment and what fish we had. So, and we were fine, everybody was legal, and Dick, if you know Dick, was chatting away with the Marine officer as he's trying to get away because Dick won't stop talking. And Dick's holding on, and the Marine guy's pulling his boat away. Dick won't let go, and we're saying, Dick, let go of the boat. Dick eventually turns the canoe right upside down, all of our gear to the bottom of the lake, all of us thankfully standing in water that we could then retrieve our gear. But that was a classic. Dick stopped talking. Yeah. And those of us who love Dick dearly know what that's all about. So that would be a little funny anecdote I could leave you with. Maybe the last one would be, I think we won the Battle of the Bands competition. We formed a staff band, and we had the best time. I had 2 female students as lead singers with me, and we had the best time. And I think the consensus was we won the Battle of the Band competition, but we wouldn't accept the award because we wanted a student group to be able to open for the main act the next day at Spring Fling. So, but that was a fun experience too.
The things you do for love.
Amen. Yes, indeed.
Well, this has been fun. Thank you
Great.
very much for coming.
Yeah, and obviously we could have gone longer, and I hope I covered things well enough for you.
I think we'll find some more opportunities to make use of some of those awesome.
Well, and and I was glad I did this montage back when we had, was the PET group maybe 50 years or no, that can't
40.
be 40, and but I was, unfortunately, I don't know what I did with the original pictures. I tended to, I have them scanned now, so, but the scans aren't as good, so.